Hi, my name is Eric Rose, and this is a video tutorial about making video game content. The reason I'm making this is it's hard to figure out how to start sometimes, and if you just want to build a model, put a texture on it, and get it into a video game, and then run around and see it, then this is the tutorial for you. We're going to use Maya for our 3D modeling software. You can get a trial version of Maya, or if you're a student, you can get a free student version for 3 years. I'll be using the student version of this tutorial. You're also going to need Photoshop. You can get a free trial of Photoshop with Adobe Creative Cloud. And we're going to be using Unity as the game engine. And Unity is a free download for the personal version. Alright, so a quick overview of the workflow. We're going to be using Maya 2014 to create our model. We're going to come into Photoshop and we're going to texture that model. We're going to come back into Maya, put the texture on it, and then we're going to bring it into Unity. Now, this is a sample game scene I've downloaded. It is called Unity Labs. So if you want to download that, it's pretty big. It might take a while to download, but just to make this tutorial quick, I'm using a pre-built scene. Okay, in Maya, the quickest way to start building something is with polygons. So up here I have all my polygon options. I'm going to grab a polygon cube and drag it to a good size here, and then click and drag to give it some volume. Now this is going to be, we're going to make a stick man, just a real simple stick man to bring in. Your 4, 5, and 6 keys change from wireframe, shaded, and textured view. We don't have any texture on, so we're just going to leave it in the wireframe view. Now the way to start manipulating these primitives is if you right click on one and hold the right click, you have the option to select the primitive in different ways. We can grab edges, we can grab faces, we can grab individual vertices. We're going to start with a face. So to start building this thing out, I'm going to click on one face, and if I command click, I can rotate it around, and then if I shift click, I can select a second face. So I'm going to take these two faces, and the way to start building this out is if you edit the mesh and extrude, it's going to make another face on top of those two faces. So what I can do now is make that face a bit smaller. What I'm doing here is scaling. And your W, Q, and E and R keys are going to be what change between selection mode, move mode, rotate mode, and scale mode. So with these two faces still selected, I'm going to hit W and start to move up. These are going to be kind of the arm sockets that we're going to grow the arm out of this model with. So with them still selected, if we extrude again, I can now grab this arrow tool and start to pull that new face out. And we'll say these are the arms, and the G key is the shortcut to do your last command. So if I hit G, it will extrude again. Now I'm going to pull these arms out, and if I click on one of these scale boxes, I now get a new scale box in the middle that does a uniform scale. G again to grow the hands out a bit more, G to grow them out, and I'm going to scale these in. And for the sake of time, I won't put any detail on the hands. We'll call these the hands. For the head, I'm going to select the top and hit G again. I'll extrude this in a bit to give him a neck. I'll hit G again and pull that neck up. G again, and I'll space the bottom of the head out a bit and pull it up. G to give the head some height, and G again to kind of taper off the top. Okay, now we'll quickly give him legs. So I'm going to hit G, and I'm just going to scale the middle in here a bit, and then W to pull it down, and we're just going to give him stick legs. So I'm going to select the hips here, G, and pull those legs out a bit. Alright, now if we right click and hold it and hit object mode, we can now select him in object mode again, and we'll say this is about good for our model. The next thing we're going to do is get rid of some of these hard edges. So if I select him and under the mesh drop down do smooth, I can kind of smooth out that shape, and if I hit G to do that command again, I can continue to smooth. We'll just do one level of smoothing for this demo. The next thing we're going to want to do is put a texture on him or a skin. So if I select the model and I go to create UVs, I have a number of options to create the UV map and kind of how it's draped across the model. Automatic mapping is going to work just fine for this demo. So I'll select automatic mapping. Now that we've got more or less the coordinates for where the texture is going to go on the model, if we go to Window, UV Texture Editor, we can actually see how this texture is laid out on a 2D space. So this is going to be where our texture goes, and it's going to be draped across the model. We're now going to take this UV map over to Photoshop and add some texture to it. So if I go to Polygons, UV Snapshot, I can browse to the location that I want to save this to. I'm going to go ahead and put it in my work folder. We're going to call it UV Snapshot. We're going to want this size is bigger than the default. You might want to crank this up depending on how much resolution you want on that texture. I'm going to save it as a PNG so it has transparency. PNG brings alpha channels over so you can see through, and you'll see that when we bring that into Photoshop. And once all that is set, go ahead and hit OK. And this should have dropped right there into our projects folder. So now we're going to jump over to Photoshop and we're going to bring this snapshot in. So in Photoshop, I'm going to open my UV snapshot. And you can see the checker tile in the background means that it has only brought these lines through, which is exactly what we want. So in Photoshop, we see that the UV map has come through with a transparency layer. So if I make a new layer and bring it underneath it and give it a white background or a white fill, we now just have these lines. So I'm going to make another layer on top of it, and this is where we're going to start adding our texture in. I like to start texturing by adding a tileable texture. So if I go over to Google and just do a search for tileable texture, we should find something that will work for us. We want him to have kind of a cool surface. This looks pretty cool. I'm going to copy this image, bring it over and paste it on a layer. I want to paste it on a layer underneath the UV set layer. And I'll scale it to get it kind of on the same scale that the model is going to be. And then from here I'll duplicate it out and just line it up side by side. Now because this is a tileable texture, what I can do is paste it and put it side by side with copies of itself, and the texture will tile, so it'll give the illusion of being seamless. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now once I have this texture all tiled out, what I can do is go ahead and set the opacity of that layer down just so I can see where my UVs are. And just for the sake of the demo, I'm going to add a little bit of definition in with a color that will show up well. Maybe like a burned orange. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of definition in here. Now we'll bring the opacity of that layer back up. So we've got a repeating texture and a little bit of definition in this texture. We're going to want to save this out now. We don't want to keep those lines in because those lines are simply for our reference. And from here I'll save it as a PNG to my project folder. So now I've got the texture as well as the snapshot. We're going to come back into Maya and we're going to add this texture to the model. So I'm going to show you how to quickly assign a new material to the model and then add a texture to that material. If you right click on your model and go to assign new material, an option menu will pop up. we'll just go ahead and select blend, which is a pretty standard material. And for the color, instead of a color, we want to link this to an image, our texture image. So click the checkered button and then click File. And go ahead and find your texture. Your 4, 5, and 6 keys will turn on your wireframe, shaded, and texture, and now you can see that we've got the texture on the model. The newest version of Unity works pretty well with Maya. From here we can either save as, file, save scene as, or what I like to do, which is a little bit more efficient, if you select the model and then do File, Export Selection. This way you make sure that you're not saving anything else you might have hidden in the scene. I'm going to save this to my project folder, and Unity can read an MB or an MA file. So personal preference, I like to save as .mb. So I'm going to save this MB to my project folder, and we'll call this Stickman. It's letting me know it's a student version. And now we have Stickman MB in our project folder. Alright, once we have the model with the texture on it, we can grab both and drag these over into Unity. I'm going to drag them right into the Assets folder. And from here I can grab our model and drag it directly into the scene. And just like in Maya, you have the pan, move, rotate, and scale tools. I'm going to grab the scale tool and start scaling this guy down a bit. And I also want to move him down into the area of the scene I'm at. From here we can also grab the texture and drag it right onto him. And now you can see we have the texture we created with a little bit of definition in it. And from here I'll go ahead and hit play in the scene. Now we have the game running with our model that we've created. So to recap, we started in Maya, we built a model out of a primitive, we exported the UV map of that model and added a texture to it in Photoshop. We came back and assigned a new material and added the texture file to that material in the model. And we brought it into Unity, where now we can see it in the game.